This is the Menopause Movement Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Michelle Gordon. Now, here at the Menopause Movement, we've surveyed over 50,000 menopausal women. And through this, we've discovered that the number one cause of menopausal suffering for our clients is weight gain. Now, you've said things like, how do I lose the minnow belly? I don't recognize myself anymore. How can I get me back? When menopause hit me out of the blue, I had no idea what was happening. And when I gained about 50 pounds overnight, I hated what I saw in the mirror. The menopause movement exists to provide world-class transformational education to women who are suffering from the symptoms and effects of menopause. And we're here to give you the education you need to get your life back. We want menopause to be the best time of your life. I mean, it is for me, and I want that for you. After years of trial and error, I finally cracked the code with my menopause weight. And now I want to share with you how I did it. I realized that what helped me the most was a challenge. So we've created a challenge for you to help you lose your minnow belly. Simply go to menopausemovement.com/challenge to sign up. I'll see you there. Hey, what's up, Menopod? Hey, update on Sashimi, the poor dog who I tried to shave. I took the dogs to the groomer in my car a few weeks ago, and they smelled really bad. But when I went to pick them up, they were nicely shaven and smelled really great. Except Sashimi, who had like this hot spot on his face. And he wouldn't leave it alone, so I had to buy him a cone of shame. He's finally starting to heal, but it's slow. Yeah, I wash the wound with some antibiotic solution every day, but it still looks so angry. Plus, with that cone, he's walking into everything because he can't see out the side of his face. It's both sad and funny, and I want him to heal, so we deal with it. Speaking of healing, isn't that something we all ultimately want in our lives? You know, menopause has arrived like an unwanted guest, and now we have to deal with that too. On top of that, we get all the symptoms plus the weight gain, and it's so frustrating to look in the mirror and loathe what you see. I know I did. And we're going to talk about that later today, but I just want you to know I have the same problem as you do. And in my quest to make menopause the best time of my life, I uncovered a great way to stay on top of that minnow belly. And that's why we created the 28-day minnow belly challenge. It's a way to get started on weight loss without any weird diets or tons of exercise. In fact, you don't even have to exercise unless you want to. So head on over to menopausemovement.com/challenge to sign up and take control of your menopause weight. And today we welcome Katie Corbett to the show. Katie holds a master's degree in community health education and is a certified health education specialist and a busy mom of 8, whom she homeschools. After yo-yo dieting for over 30 years, Katie finally researched and learned how to lose weight for the last time, and she lost 60 pounds. She now helps women do the same thing. She also teaches busy moms how to manage stress and anxiety without using food and how to make time for self-care. Katie walks you through step-by-step how to implement a holistic approach to your health and create a sustainable life that suits each individual personally. And during the podcast, we talk about how Katie gained 70 pounds and how she lost it, caring for everyone and putting yourself last. Thing that made Katie feel jealous, and she's not a jealous person. A year of grace. It all starts with awareness. The 3 things you can do right now to start losing weight, the 5 pillars of weight loss, how to be less reactive, and stay to the end to find out the best ways to lose weight that don't involve diet and exercise. At the end of this episode, visit menopausemovement.com/podcast, where you can find the show notes plus the links to the books and resources mentioned in the episode. And if you enjoy this episode, make sure you leave a written review, like and subscribe on YouTube, and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. So you're always the first to know when each episode is released. And how do you want to improve menopause? I mean, if you had a magic wand, let me know. I really want to hear from you. Send me a DM on Instagram at Dr. Michelle Gordon, or even on Facebook, also at Dr. Michelle Gordon. And when you send me a DM, you get me. It's not somebody else. Or you can also send an email to drgordon@menopausemovement.com. That's drgordon@menopausemovement.com. And I'll answer you. And thanks again for being a part of the menopause movement. Now, let's get to Katie. Well, Katie, welcome to the Menopause Movement Podcast. I'm so happy to have you here. You've got a great story, and I'm super excited for you to share, especially because women in menopause, number one thing that they complain about is weight. Number one, hands, like all holds barred. That is the big thing. And, after surveying over 50,000 women in menopause, it's between 46 and 48% of the women who answer our surveys saying, like, I just got to shift this weight. I don't recognize myself anymore. So, I think what's really great about you is that how you have been able to crack the code on dieting. And so what I'd like to figure out first is, like, how did you gain the weight? What happened?
I had a lot of kids.
A lot of kids.
Yes. So after I have 8 children altogether, but after my 7th baby, and they came like every 2 years. So I would really have, I'd be pregnant for the 9 months, then have the baby, then nurse for the year. And then I would get pregnant after I weaned the baby only a couple months later. So really never got rid of the previous pregnancy's birth weight that I had gained.
Yeah.
And so after my 7th baby, I was 70 pounds overweight. And I realized too, I really wasn't focused on myself at all. I had not made any time in my day for any form of self-care whatsoever. And a friend of mine, actually what kind of triggered this in me was this realization was a friend of mine finished an Ironman competition. And I don't know how familiar you or your listeners are to that, but it is an intense investment of time. You have to you swim. I believe it's 2 miles, a little bit more than 2 miles. Then you get on a
2-mile swim in the ocean, and then you ride your bike 100 miles. This is a full Ironman, and then you run a marathon.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And I was so proud of her when she finished. But then my very next feeling was jealousy. And I'm not a jealous person, but I really felt jealous. And I was trying to figure out, like, why do I feel this way? I'm really proud of her. And there is no part of me that ever wants to compete in an Ironman competition. So it wasn't like I was jealous of the accomplishment. But when I dug down, I realized I was really kind of jealous of the fact that she was doing something for herself and I wasn't. And there was a major gap. I realized, like, hey, I don't even own my own hairbrush. I've really just invested so much attention into my own kids that if I wanted to brush my hair, I would just go grab one of theirs and quickly brush my hair and be on with the day. And so when I started my journey, I was 70 pounds overweight. I was frustrated. I was 39. So I was looking down the pike of turning 40 and feeling like I'm not comfortable in my own skin. I know this is not my natural set point of weight, right? Like I'm 5'1". 70 pounds overweight is really significant on my body. And I didn't feel good. And I felt tired. And I just wanted to feel better and more like myself. And so I knew diets weren't the answer, though, because I do have a master's degree in health education. I actually struggled with my weight for 30 years. I would yo-yo diet, and I went into the health field searching for an answer for like the weight. Like, how do I do this? How do I be a healthy person? So health for me was always important, but yet here I was overweight. And so I knew all the information of what to eat. And I'm sure your listeners do too, right? Like, all the healthy eating rules, but yet you still struggle with feeling like I don't know how to get rid of this weight. So I gave myself what I call a year of grace. And I said, I'm not going to diet. I'm going to actually just allow myself grace. I'm not going to hate my body. I'm proud of it. It gave birth to so many times. It's been through a lot. I'm going to give myself a year of grace and see if I can just do research, right? Like put the master's degree to use and say, I'm going to research what the best practices are to lose weight and see what I can do. And so that's what I did. I learned how actually it was a lot of mental information. Like I actually learned how my brain had set up these automatic patterns where if I had some sort of unpleasant emotion or something happen, it was an automatic pathway in my brain where my brain says, I want to keep you healthy and I want to keep you safe and happy. And so I've learned that if I tell you to go eat something, or if I tell you you're suddenly hungry, I know you'll go eat and you'll feel better. And I know that pattern works. So without realizing it, I'd have an uncomfortable emotion, or maybe I'd feel overwhelmed because, I've got 7 kids here and my husband's gone most of the day. And so I'm feeling overwhelmed and we homeschool. And then I'd feel bad for feeling overwhelmed because, good moms don't feel overwhelmed is something I would tell myself. And then I would find myself at 4:00 elbow deep in a bag of chocolate chips because I just wanted to feel better. And my brain.
So there's a lot to unpack there.
Yes,
thing I think that's really, you're speaking our language. You're speaking the language of the menopausal woman
Yeah.
who has spent her whole life taking care of everyone else.
Right.
And then what she looks in the mirror and doesn't recognize herself anymore.
Absolutely.
And of course, that's why we have our 28-day Mental Belly Challenge, which you can get when you go to menopausemovement.com/challenge. And it's not about diets. But you've also said that you had to figure out your thought patterns. And whenever we want to make a change, and the menopause movement is here, it's all about change. The first thing we have to have is some awareness. And whenever we do it, whenever we do change, it's a matter of, we think about change for a long time. And then something happens that has us kind of step over from the thinking about change to taking some sort of an action. It's a decision or whatever. And so change really does happen in an instant, but it doesn't mean anything unless you take action. Right. So what are some of the actions that you took? You put here, 3 things that people can do right now to start losing weight.
Yes. All right. And it's so simple. So probably your listeners are a lot like me, where they know all the food rules. They know what makes them, what not to eat and what to eat, right? Because we know that, right? It's not about, just eat less and move more. That is so infuriating to me, because it's like there's so many more layers to it. If it was that simple, so many of us wouldn't struggle. So what I tell my clients to do is, and this is really based on psychology and on the research that I have done. So what you want to do is just get a journal. And prior to the next day, so if you just finished breakfast, so for example, right now when we're recording this, right, breakfast is over. So what I would do is sit down and I'm going to write down what I want to eat tomorrow for the day. And I do this so that I am using the prefrontal cortex of my brain, which is like the planning and decision-making and the goal-setting region of my brain, to think of my future self, of the goals I want to hit. Like, okay, I want to be a healthier version of myself. So what could I eat that would nourish me, that would give me energy, coming from a place of love and compassion, considering, okay, what's my day going to look like tomorrow, right? All those things. And it shouldn't take too long, right? You don't have to get too deep into the weeds, but just consider all those factors and then just write down in a kind and caring and compassionate way what you're going to eat the next day. And then your challenge, okay, so that's the first thing. And then so the next day comes and you're looking at your food journal. And then this is where your brain is going to start to fight back on this, right? And so now what I want you to do is, if you have like this crazy desire to not eat what's on your plan, right? Your brain is like, this is never going to work. Why would you do this to yourself, right? And it's fighting against you. What I want you to do is just get a glass jar. It could be a mason jar. And what I did is I went to Michael's and I got these little glass beads that are kind of see-through. And each bead, like about 100 is probably a good, but you can fill it with anything. It's really just for the visual, so your brain can connect this, right? But what I want you to do is add a splash of joy to your joy jar every time you do not answer the call to go off the eating plan that you've created for yourself. Okay. So you write down what you want to eat 24 hours ahead of time. And then when you are tempted to eat off of the plan that you created for yourself, you're just simply going to sit with it and not answer it. So you're not going to, if you're feeling crazy and you want chips or you want chocolate or whatever, you're not going to answer it. You're going to allow yourself to feel that. And every time, for like every 10 to 15 minutes that you have that craving or urge, you're just going to add a splash of joy to your joy jar. And the reason we do this is you're going to start taking control of your brain. And rather than reacting to your brain telling you and kind of driving the car, you're going to take over and you're going to say, no, I am going to, come from a place of compassion, but I'm also in charge now. And I'm not going to just react to whatever's going on. I'm going to sit with this emotion and I'm going to learn how to feel it and understand where it's coming from. And every time I don't answer those uncomfortable emotions with food, I'm going to reward myself with a splash of joy. And then after you've reached that 100 splashes of joy, there's so many things that happen. One, you've created that neural pathway in your brain that says, you don't have to just react to anything that's unpleasant or uncomfortable with food, right? It also represents all these calories that you haven't eaten. Okay. And then you've built a little bit of self-trust. Like, okay, I can tell myself something and stick to it for those 24 hours. And so it's like little tiny baby steps, but then you're also building self-efficacy. Like, hey, I can do this. And you can carry this tool, wherever you want to go, but you're learning how to have confidence in yourself and your own decisions, right? And then that will build, success builds on success. So that will help you. And then the third thing you're going to do is when you're not answering the urge to go ahead and eat something, you're going to sit with those emotions and you're going to try to notice patterns. All right. When am I feeling the urge to eat all the time? For me, it was 4:00 in the afternoon and I was overwhelmed and I was feeling like a terrible mom because I was feeling overwhelmed, and I would have that urge. Like it was such a powerful struggle for me. I wanted to just go have the chocolate and I would just sit there like, no, you're not going to. And then once I started to like realize like this is what's happening, I'm not actually hungry for chocolate chips. It's just my brain wanting me to feel better and less overwhelmed. I said, well, what else can I be doing so that I'm not feeling overwhelmed, but I could be feeling better? And I like learning, right? And I said, well, I have a driveway that goes in a circle, and I could take the kids that are super loud at 4:00 every afternoon, and we could go outside and they could play, and I could put a podcast on and I could just walk. And that will help me decompress. It will help me feel just as relaxed and good as if I stayed inside and had chocolate. But it actually will support my health instead of, derailing my health efforts. And so that's what I did. Identified the pattern, right? Which is the third step. So you identify the pattern of when you have these irresistible urges and cravings, and then try to see if you can come up with solutions that will help you feel just as good as food would in those situations. And those are 3 quick, easy, you could start today right away doing it.
So what I want to say is that this would work for just about any type of craving, including one of the things that I find that I crave a lot, and I'm an athlete. I was doing triathlons I trained anyway. I didn't actually do a triathlon, but I trained. And I was drinking until maybe, I don't know, I kind of stopped drinking maybe about 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I still find that there are times when I just want to sit and drink.
Yes.
And it's the weirdest damn thing. And so what I do when I have that craving, I think, well, I'm going to feel crappy. And it took me a long time because I compare it to how easy it is for me to say no to marijuana. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. I hate the way that stuff makes me feel. I don't use it. I don't like it. There's nothing about marijuana I like. I don't like feeling that out of control. I don't like feeling that woozy kind of like weird way. And then I get paranoid. So it isn't good for me. And so it's easy for me to say no to it. But when it comes to alcohol, because it's there's such a social aspect to it, it's a little bit harder. And I could actually see somebody with 8 children or 9 children or more, or even fewer, who at 4 p.m. just have to have a glass of wine.
Absolutely.
And it's the same thing. So we crave things, and it's our brain trying to save us from ourselves, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And our brain. So let me just, what happens is we get into this thought. We get into this thought of that I like to call the Grand Canyon of thought. And it's just something that we say to ourselves over and over again. But in reality, what we have is the opportunity to change our thoughts. And that's when life starts to get really good, is when we can start to, and it doesn't matter what if you want to use the beads in a jar, or if you want to use paper, it doesn't matter, but there's always some sort of a trigger that can help you really understand how to improve your trust in yourself. And that leads to self-efficacy, which is truly, self-efficacy is really just believing that you can do something.
Right. Yeah. And I notice too, whenever there's a gap in life, we might not even, I think identifying it is so crucial, because we're designed to, especially with our brains, to not feel pain, right? Never feel uncomfortable. So your brain will do what it needs to do to help you feel better. So either it might be alcohol when the kids finally go to sleep, or it could be, running up your credit card, shopping, because that helps you feel better, right? Or it could be overeating. It could be smoking. There's like so many ways your brain will just default if you're not aware of it. And so once you become aware of the patterns that you're doing that are not supporting you in whatever the goals are that you want to hit, you can at least address it. And I always say, like, extra weight on a body is really a symptom of life out of balance. And it's just, you have to be a detective and just dig up, okay, where are the gaps in life? And that's how I'm using food. For me, I felt like not myself. I just needed to have an identity. And that's actually why I started this. Because once I realized, like, I really miss teaching. I really miss connecting with other women and helping them. I was kind of up, just being mom. And I missed that other side of me that got to connect with other women and teach them and help them. And once I identified that and said, let me research and let me create this program for women and stuff, my life filled up with that, with purpose. And then food really took a back seat and wasn't as important because I was able to create things in my life that were important for me. And so food took its natural place. So if you have your listeners are having a problem with, I just can't, all I do is think about food, or if there's such a pull for me. And I would just say, like, look for other ways to light yourself up and fill yourself up so that food isn't the most important part of your day.
Yeah,
it has its place. But
yeah, well, it does. But one of the things that happens in menopause, and it's really strange, but as we lose our hormones, there is something that happens in our brains. And one thing that I hear from women over and over and over is, why can't I stop thinking about food? And why do I crave food? And why am I always hungry? And so there is a hormonal thing that comes with menopause that does lead us to eat more. And then on top of that, because we've lost our estrogen, our body is holding onto fat in the belly to keep estrogen there. I mean, that's just part of what happens. And so we get the minnow belly, and then we don't know how to lose it. And so if you're like me and you gained a lot of weight during your pregnancy, I mean, you said you had 7 pregnancies and you gained 10 pounds each time. I gained 50 pounds with my pregnancy. I lost like 10, and then I never lost it. And I kept gaining after that. And it took me a long time to figure out how to, it was actually in menopause when I put on even more weight. I was like, I got to do something about this. And I kind of figured out a system that works. And that's one of the reasons why we have the menopause movement. But when you realize that your brain is craving something, it's your body telling you, hey, let's examine this. And what we don't do very often is take a look at how our thoughts and our feelings are driving our actions.
Right.
When we don't stop and take a look at those things, then we become a victim of our circumstances and we don't really take charge of our lives. And so one thing that I like to help women do in menopause is to really start to see how this can become the best time of your life. When, what I love about menopause is there's no kids in the house. I can travel, there's a little bit more disposable income. So there's a lot of really great things that come along with menopause. But if we choose to only focus on the misery that the symptoms are causing, then it's really hard for us to create a life we love. And so what we do at the menopause movement is we help women kind of change their brains in a lot of ways. And it's a lot of what you do.
Yes.
So what would you say are the 5 pillars, your 5 pillars of weight loss?
So the first thing would be to recognize your habits and then raise your awareness. Okay. So that would be the first pillar. So, and like I said, everybody knows like the what to eat. So I actually don't really spend a whole lot of time on that at all, because I really feel like by the time that people come to me, they are done with dieting. They're over it. They know what to eat. They know, and they probably tried at least 10 different diets, or probably more, but they know all the food rules, right? So the first one is to recognize their habits and to raise their awareness. Then the second one would be to change their brain patterns and their behavior. Okay. And that comes, you have to first raise your awareness and be aware of the patterns before you can start to change them. Then the next one would be to raise their self-esteem and start to identify a future self concept. So, who do you want to be? Like, how do you want to show up? We say like they don't feel comfortable in their own skin, or they don't recognize themselves anymore. Well, who is it that they want to be? Who do they want to, what do they want for themselves? Because you have to go somewhere, right? Like you have to move towards something to make all these changes. So you want to really develop a relationship with this future version of yourself. And what I had learned was once you do that, your brain actually considers the future version of yourself as an actual person. Like it will start to relate to that person. So if you're a people pleaser and you can like really get your future self concept in cement, and then you could really think like, I can't, I have to stick to these health goals because I can't let her down. Your brain will.
Well, I just want to say something that I say a lot is that, you can't lose 100 pounds overnight. It's just not possible.
Never.
But when you start to be the person who lost 100 pounds, that's when you can step into that. But the whole idea is the being. And that's really the same thing, in your third pillar. And so what I like to talk about a lot is who am I going to be, and who am I being now, and who do I want to be, and what does that person do? I in my business, I look at this. In my life, in every single aspect of my life, I'm like, am I being the person that I want to be, and how can I start to really own the responsibility that comes along with being that, and doing those things and making those choices. And that's how I was able to drop all the weight that I dropped, when menopause hit, and then also start to become an athlete. I mean, when I first started running, it was, I probably weighed 220 pounds, and I would run for a minute and my heart rate would go up to 180, and then I'd walk for a long time, and I would only do a mile at a time.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so now, I'm more than 50 pounds less than that. And it's, now I'm doing an event this Saturday. I'm doing a race for the first time. And, would it be nice to do an Ironman? I think that's on my vision board, but
wow,
in order to do that though, that requires a lot of training.
A lot. I was, yeah. And I think that's what made me jealous of her was the fact that she had that much time to dedicate to herself. And I realized like that is probably why I was jealous of her, because it really does.
So,
it's an investment.
So time is relative, right? Time is a construct that we made up. Mm-hmm. And if it's important enough for us, we're going to find the time to do it.
Absolutely.
And that's, I think, more than if you take nothing else back from this podcast today, is that when something is important to you, the time is always there. And if you look back at your life and you realize that, and if you say, I don't have time to exercise, that's fine. You don't have time to exercise, but you can pay attention, because you really exercise and diet. I mean, when you want to lose weight, it has nothing to do with exercise. We exercise because we start to feel better and our bodies want to move. So I just don't like the idea that there's no time, because, and I'm going to piss some people off with it by saying that, but in reality, we can spend our own, we just choose how to spend our time. I mean, I find that my days go really fast because I love what I do. Yeah. Do I get as much done as I want to? Probably never. But I do it. So, all right. So what's the fourth pillar?
So the fourth pillar actually would be, so then the next thing you want to do is, once you develop that future self-concept, then you want to create a life where food isn't that important. So once you figure out who you want to be, now you're going to set patterns up to make sure you become that person, right? So what do you have to do to create a life where food is no longer that important? And then the last thing would be is to move your body for pleasure, right? Find ways to move your body that feel good, and like you just said, not necessarily for weight loss, because I think sometimes we think, okay, I just jogged a mile, now I'm going to go eat, and it just negates it, right? So you're moving your body for pleasure in a way that makes you feel good and strong, but not necessarily for weight loss, right? So find something to do. But I want to touch real quick on your point that you made about having time and money. My husband right now, he is having a very serious back issue, and he can barely walk. And so he maybe takes a couple steps and he has a pinched nerve, and he spent most of this week in doctor's appointments with an orthopedist. He did see a chiropractor. He went to his regular doctor. He now has to start physical therapy, right? But all those things take time. Yeah. And if he could have proactively taken the same amount of time that he has spent now in doctor's appointments, waiting for prescriptions, waiting for x-rays, and time not being able to work, and instead said, let me invest my time in taking an hour every day and making my body strong and exercising, or, movement. It doesn't, if you have an adverse reaction to exercise, like just call it movement then, or just taking the time and investing financially in a program like yours, right? Like where people, they might not want to, but you're going to spend money on your health. And it's either going to be on the front end being proactive, or it's going to be on the back end treating an illness, right? So it's going to cost, there's a cost to everything. And so you get to choose which side of that you want to spend your time and effort and money on. Like, you're either going to treat your wellness or you're going to treat your illness. And you really just have to choose and decide which one you want, and then make that a priority.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important. There's a great book that you may want to give to your husband. It's called The Great Pain Deception.
Okay.
And it's all about how
Write
to
that
look
down.
at pain from a different angle.
Mhm.
It's a book that we recommend here at the Menopause Movement because we have a lot of women who come in with things like fibromyalgia and whatnot, and
Yeah.
then they'll come into our program and they'll join as a mental mate, and we've had some women get off of up to 80% of their medication
That's wonderful.
because they start to master their lives.
Mhm.
And I mean, that's the key to everything.
I agree.
And so when it comes to movement though, I think you're right about, it's important when we start to feel better, we're going to want to move more. And the thing is that when we feel better in small increments. It's not like we feel better it's not like you're going to feel 100% better tomorrow. You're going to feel maybe 1% better
Mhm.
over a week or something. And then all of a sudden, after a few months of mastering your head and maybe changing your habits, what happens is you're like, oh, I want to go for a walk. I really do.
Mhm.
And then you
Yeah.
start to move your body and it just feels good. It feels
Right.
better. And so once you do that, then you may want to say, well, maybe I want to shape my body a little. And I do
Mhm.
think that weights are good for shaping. They will shape your body. But to use exercise as a punitive, like I ate pizza, so now I got to go get on the
Yeah.
treadmill for an hour.
Mhm.
That's not the way to live. Right.
Absolutely.
And so, and the other thing is that because most of us as children were rewarded with food, we
Uh-huh.
have this whole reward pathway that we think we deserve it. Come on, I deserve a beer now, or I deserve that ice
Mhm.
cream, or I deserve that cookie because I did XYZ. And it's this habit that our parents inadvertently kind of put into us. And so we have this belief around food rewards.
Mhm.
And so what if we could change the food reward to, I'm feeling really good, I'm going to have some chicken.
Right. Right.
If you're a vegetarian, maybe it's tofu. But
Right.
I say this all the time, and hopefully it's going to sink in. But you guys, everything is a belief. There's very, very few laws. I mean, I talk about the law of gravity, right? You're going to pick something up, it's going to fall. But everything else is just a thought that we think. And if you want to control your life, start looking at everything you believe, man, because
Mhm.
that's what that's going to do. Is it's going to help you change everything.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, words we attach to events in our experiences become the experience, right?
yeah.
So, yeah, absolutely. I'm with you 100%. And really, and another thing too is your brain, your thoughts that you have, if you're not aware of this, you just think they're the truth. And my perfect example of this is, and when I learned this, one of the things I did, like I said, I called it my year of grace, but I'd have breakfast, and then one morning I had to run out and drop something off at the post office and come right back home. And I had started to notice, every time I pull up my driveway, my brain tells me I'm hungry. And so sure enough, that morning I come home and I pull up the driveway and I felt hunger. And I challenged the thought. I was like, there's no way I'm hungry. I just had breakfast. I've been gone 10 minutes. I know I'm not hungry. And as soon as I caught the thought, like, hey, you're
Yeah.
hungry. And I challenged him, like, there's no way I could possibly be hungry. The hunger went away like that. I wasn't depriving myself. I didn't have to struggle and fight with this, oh, I hate these diets. Like, it wasn't like that at all. It was just like, hey, I know that's not the truth. It's just a thought I had. And it was a response to pulling up my driveway, and I think that was just a response because, when I have little kids and we would go out for any amount of time, when we pull up the driveway, it'd be time to give them a snack. And so it was just over the course of, 19 years now, it's like, okay, we're home, let's have a snack. And so my brain just automatically told me, okay, let's go eat, and it was finally
Yeah.
when I noticed that, and I was like, I am not hungry. I don't know why my brain is thinking that. The hunger was gone. I did not feel hunger after that for at that particular moment. And then I would laugh because every time I'd pull up the driveway, my brain would start to say, it's time to, and I'd be like, nope, it is not time to eat. And just finding those little patterns in my brain was what I lost weight. I lost 60 pounds and I wasn't starving myself. I was not depriving myself. It was just, I was noticing the thoughts that I was having. And I had previously believed like that must be true because why would I think it if it wasn't true? And just challenging them. No, there's no way I could be hungry right now. No, you're not hungry. You're feeling stressed right now. No, you're feeling overwhelmed right now. No, you're worried right now. No, whatever. Or no, you're happy right now. The kids are finally sleeping and now you have a few minutes to yourself. That's when you would reward yourself. Like, no, you're not. You're not doing that right now. So it's just finding those patterns that my brain was that I thought were just true. I really didn't know to question them or to challenge them at all. But once I did, then the weight finally started coming off because I wasn't answering it all the time with food.
Yeah, that's so important that everything starts with awareness. And when you're able to really start to challenge those thoughts, and I have a similar example. At the end of 2018, we went on this cruise to the Caribbean. It was beautiful. It was like we went for a New Year's Eve down to St. Bart's, and it was really nice. But I found myself, I was really starting to work on awareness at that time. And I realized that every time I looked in the mirror, I said, I hate you.
Oh.
I hate you. And I thought, if I want, and at the time I was running, I was biking, I was swimming, but I was still really heavy and, a lot heavier than I am now. And I was like, And I said, if all I do is hate myself, I'm never going to get what I want because that's not right. And so I made this, instead of saying, I hate this body, I said, I'm just going to change my thoughts and say, I love you. I love you. And while I may not love what I see in the mirror now, at least I don't say I hate you anymore.
Yeah. Right.
And that's such a big shift. And it has allowed me to not only do more with my body, but actually, accept my body where it is. And I'm starting to look in the mirror and like what I see.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Because you're not gonna take care of or change something you hate. Right. We don't do that. But then we think, oh, well, if I tell myself I love my body, or then I'll just be complacent with it. But really, that's not true. Like you'll want to take care of something that you love. And if loving your body seems so distant, like you just like, that is just crazy, you can just say, I approve, or I respect you, or I like you, or, thank you for strong legs, or, thank you for breathing for me without having to think about it, or for the heartbeat, or, for good
health.
thoughts or something. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's really great to even just have health. And we take that for granted because we just have it. And then, if our body gets assaulted with something else, it's like, wait a minute. Yeah. So let's get back to time. How when, you have this really busy life, you have children from the ages of 19 to 2.
Yeah.
And so how do you make the time to take care of yourself?
I make it a priority. So it is probably my number one priority. I make sure I go to bed at a decent time. I don't stay up late, but that really for me is not hard to do because I usually do go to bed by 9:30. I joke with my husband. I'm like a senior citizen, but I always, even in college, like I would just go to bed early. But I like to go to bed early because I really do like to get up early. And so I'll get up early, maybe 5:30. And that is just time for me. My kids are not up yet. And when they're really little, sometimes they're up. And if I'm up with a nursing baby, I'll give myself grace and let myself sleep. But usually I can get out of bed and I'm up and at 'em that early. And that gives me time. It gives me mental space. I'll read something. I try to read something for my soul and my mind and for like personal development, right? Like a book in each, like a chapter in each book. And I usually do that. And then I'll exercise. And if by then, maybe it's like 6:30, 7:00, if my kids are starting to get up, I'll manage them first because I know they'll be all up in my grill if I don't take care of them. So I'll make sure they have breakfast or give them whatever it is that they need. And I had to create, I had to consider, okay, I can't get up and I don't have the luxury right now in my life of just going to the gym for hours a day. That's just not realistic for me. But I can just have some weights in my living room and an iPad, and I can watch a DVD or watch a workout video and do that. And still manage to get in 30 to 40 minutes of a workout in the same room as my kids. So that they're around me and I'm keeping an eye on them, and maybe I have to pause it sometimes, but that's just the season of life I'm in. So I had to just consider, right, what's available to me right now, what's within the budget I have, the time I have, what can I do to make sure that my health needs are being met. And so I do that every morning, and that sets me up for I feel less anxious. I don't tend to feel as overwhelmed then, because I've taken care of a core essence of myself, and not in a selfish way, but just in a necessary way, right? And I feel good. And then I'm like, why would I want to eat something poor? I just took so much time investing into myself. I want to eat something that's going to nourish me now, right? And so then I'll have breakfast, and then, we do homeschool. So then we do school for a good chunk of the day. And then by 4:00, we'll all go outside. And, that's when I'll put a podcast on so I can learn something and walk and kind of blow the dust off from the day and let the kids get out, their energy and stuff before dinner. And so that's usually how I set my day up. I kind of have those two anchors in my day, first thing in the morning and then right around 4 o'clock. And that 4 o'clock, like I said, it just helps me blow the dust off. I can just de-stress a bit, unwind, decompress, because if I don't, I notice too, then I'll overeat when it's dinner time, right? Like if I don't have time to kind of center myself again and just, take some deep breaths and get outside and walk around a bit, then I'll use food to help me feel better, right? So I know that that's an anchor in my day that really is necessary. So 4 o'clock, get back outside and I'll walk. And that's what works for me, right? Those two times of my day, I'm able to, and actually maybe the third would be like go to bed at a decent time so that I get decent sleep, right? Not staying up late because the kids are finally sleeping. Like I try to do it on the back end, but that's me. So what I would just say is look at your day and look for times and anchors in your day that you can make your health and wellness a priority within your budget, within the time that you have, that works for your personality. If I knew if I had to wake up at 5 a.m. and then go for a 5-mile jog, I would never do it. I really dislike running. It's just not me. And I know it's great, but it's just not.
You'll never do an Ironman.
Right. Yeah. Like, it's just not me. But if I knew like, okay, I could get up and maybe go do Pilates or just some strength training, that I was like, oh, I'm excited to do it, right? Like, so that's my personality and that fits for me. So really it's, again, you have to figure out what works for you and what health goals you have, and then look around and look and see what is available to you and how can you make that just a priority for your life.
So the best exercise is one you'll do.
Yes.
And I like to say that. And in our program, we start with really easy exercises, and then they get progressively harder, so that when women come in, if you've never exercised before, we just give you some simple things you can do to, like maybe push up against a wall, just to get you moving again.
Yep.
And if you want to, I think it's really important to have a morning routine. A morning routine will set you up for the whole day. And you talked about, how you're reading personal development and you're reading spiritual stuff and you're probably journaling, all these things. And Hal Elrod has a really, really good formula. And I would say that, you can pick up the book, The Miracle Morning, if you haven't already.
Oh, I've heard of that.
Yeah. And he's I can't remember the acronym off the top of my head, but it's basically just, if you do these 10, there's 6 things and you do them for 10 minutes each, then you can start to really take control of your life. And so I do recommend that book. It changed a lot of lives, and he's a pretty amazing guy. So that's something really good. So in terms of, let's talk a little bit about reactivity, how we can, you've got 8 children, and I can imagine that you have to live your life with a lot of intention. And you have to really pay attention to what your kids are saying in the moment so that you don't become that reactive parent that just yells. So how do you do that? How do you stop being so reactive?
I expect chaos. And I mean that kind of funny, but I expect life to go sideways. I'm not surprised when it does. It's like, okay, this is the part where life went sideways. And so I plan for it, right? So if all of a sudden I'm behind on laundry or I'm behind, I always try to have some healthy food in the freezer because stomach viruses hit or kids fall off diving boards and need to go to get stitches, right? Like it's just things happen. And so my go-to would be normally, prior to all this would be like, well, we'll just grab some takeout. Like, life is crazy right now. I didn't expect the day to go like this. And so-and-so cracked their tooth and we had to go sit in the dentist's office for 3 hours. Like, it's going to happen because life happens. And it's not necessarily, you might not have young kids at home, but maybe with work, a project comes up and all of a sudden it's chaos. And so if you're an emotional eater, your first reaction is like, okay, diet's out the window or healthy eating's out the window. We're just going to get takeout. We deserve it. This was a crazy day. But that would be reactive, right? So instead be like, oh, today is the day. Things went crazy. I knew this was going to happen and this is what I'm going to do. So you almost plan for it and you have a plan in place. So, okay, when things go crazy, I have 3 go-to meals that we can have real quick. Maybe it's bagged salad and canned chicken and I just toss it all together and we just have chicken and salad for dinner real quick. Or maybe it's, frozen soup that I made a few weeks ago and I made extra and I froze it and like, that's what we're going to have tonight. So you just plan, consider all the chaotic things that could possibly come up, right? Like just do a thought download or a brain dump or whatever you want to do onto a piece of paper of all the crazies that you expect to possibly happen. Kids get sick or, maybe parents are in the hospital, or, somebody fell and hurt themselves and you got to be there. Plan for all of the ways that life can go sideways because life goes sideways, like it happens. And so let's not react to it. Let's just plan for it and then have a plan in place. Okay, if mom and dad, if somebody winds up in the hospital and I have to be the caretaker for them, like what do I need to do to make sure my health stays a priority and I'm not just getting the hospital food or takeout, real quick or whatever that might be. Like just plan for it because the more ordered your life is, the less ripple effect the crazy part will get into the rest of your life. Because the very first thing that you're going to drop is probably taking care of yourself because it's just a natural thing. Your brain's going to go into preservation survival mode. It's going to say, no, you need to do this instead, right? It's going to just fall back right on its old habit of, we're going to keep you safe and we're going to keep you healthy or we're going to keep you safe and we're not going to worry about all this extra health and wellness stuff right now. We're in survival mode now. So you want to know that and then plan for it. So I always try, for example, to be caught up on laundry. I try not to have a lot of extra laundry. So if a stomach bug hits my house, I'm not 3 weeks now set back with laundry. Like I can just handle it and it doesn't affect, all these other areas of our lives. And I had learned too, when a house is disordered and chaotic, your hunger switch or I call it like your hunger switch is really turned on. You're going to feel more hungry in a house that's chaotic and disordered than you would in a house that's orderly and tidy. So you want to plan for and, declutter, clean your house up, make it a place that's, comfortable for you, that is not chaotic so that hunger switch that dial can be turned down a bit, right? These are all proactive ways that you can plan ahead of time so that, again, if your house is chaotic and then life is chaotic, you're not going to have time to clean. It's just going to get worse. But if your house is at least in order, but you don't have time to deal with it for a few days while you're dealing with whatever it is that could be chaotic, it's not going to fall apart and unravel as quick, right? Like it seems to get worse exponentially if you're not on top of things. So I would just say, be on top of as much as you can possibly be on top of so that when life goes sideways, it's already planned for and it's not a surprise. Like just don't be surprised, really.
Well, I like to say that circumstances are neutral. Things happen, right? And it's when we start to apply meaning to that, whatever it is when we start to suffer.
Right.
And so, if my kid falls off the diving board or hits their head and needs stitches, it's not necessarily a good thing for the kid, obviously, but it's just a thing, right? It's just a thing that happened. The kid's still healthy, just needs some stitches. And it's when we start to add, like, this is really bad. Oh my God, I had to do all this. We just sometimes have to pivot. I mean, everybody had to pivot through COVID. We either had to stay home, we had to start learn how to Zoom, all these things. I mean, for me, I was already home. I just didn't get to travel. So, but I think it's really important for us to remember that things happen and they're not good. They're not bad. They just are.
Right.
And it's whenever we apply the meaning to it. And when something that we think is bad happens, the sooner we can get to what the good is that was going to come out of that, the sooner our suffering ends. And so I think that's super important. So what I'd like to talk about before we go is the best way to lose weight that doesn't include diet and exercise.
Okay. So we did touch on it, right? So what I would say would be start paying attention to the patterns, right? So if you could do what I told you to do at the very first part of this is to write everything down and then stick to it. But then I want you to focus on, if you're having a very hard time keeping your word to yourself, start paying attention to what emotions are coming up for you and why are you having such a hard time. And if you could do that, that doesn't include diet or exercise, right? It's just paying attention to what your thoughts are, what your emotions are, and being willing to sit there with them without reacting to them. Just let them be there. They're not the news. They're not the truth necessarily, but you want to know what they are. So then you can see like, okay, what's the essence of this? So for example, when my friend did the Ironman and I was jealous and then I felt guilty for it, my default mode would be go have some chocolate. But instead, if I could sit there and say, why am I feeling jealous? Like, what's the root of that emotion? Where is that coming from? Then I start to learn stuff about myself. So negative emotions aren't necessarily terrible. They're really could be indicators of what's happening. And it's your brain trying to tell you maybe like, hey, something's out of balance here. Let's pay attention to this area. But if you only respond by eating or drinking or shopping or you're drowning it out, you're not actually getting to the root cause. So what I would say is notice if it's an uncomfortable emotion and what is the root of that. So for me, the root was I wasn't spending any time on myself at all. I was not taking any time for self-care whatsoever. And it really became important to me to notice like, hey, maybe I'll get a nail polish color I really like little tiny baby things that I could, like, I'm going to go get hand soap that's like a lemon scent and put it in the kitchen. And every time I wash my hands, I'm going to take a really deep breath of it and like breathe out nice and slow. And just these little tiny things, like I didn't notice I needed it, but they were just these little points in time throughout my day where it was just a little tiny bit of self-care for me that just elevated me just enough that helped the negative emotions not come up so high. Okay. Does that make sense? Yeah. So it was like, but I would never have noticed to even do those things if I had just reacted by eating, but instead said, why am I feeling jealous right now? What is going on here? I'm not a jealous person. Why do I feel bad about this? And discovering, hey, you feel bad about it because you are not spending any time taking care of yourself whatsoever. So what can you do instead? Like within your budget, within your time that's available to you that you can do to identify, okay, where are the gaps and how can I start making little tweaks in my life that make me feel better? Or that, that help me not turn to food to eat.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. Well, where can people find you?
So my website is called Health, Wellness, and Chocolate. Of course. So it's healthwellnessandchocolate.com. And I have tons of information on there. I have a free grocery list printable with some quick, easy, nourishing meals that people can make from that grocery list for free. They can just go ahead and download that. And then I also have a podcast, Health, Wellness, and Chocolate podcast, Weight Loss for Busy Moms. And also on Instagram at Health, Wellness, Chocolate.
All right, great. And was there anything else you were hoping to share today that we didn't get to?
I think we covered a ton of stuff. But I guess really if you take anything away from this, it's when you have a thought and you want to react to it, just pause, right? If you can only just pause and question it and then, try to get down to the root of it, you can really make some significant changes in your life without having to diet, without having to do crazy exercise boot camp stuff. Like just start paying attention to what your thoughts are and how you're reacting to them, or what your behavior is, right? Because like you said, your thoughts create your actions create your feelings, and then your feelings create the results that are showing up in your life. So you want to work backwards, figure out what are those thoughts I'm having and how are they affecting me? What am I doing once I have those thoughts?
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. All right. Well, Katie, thanks so much for being a part of the menopause movement today. I really appreciate you. And everyone go to Health, Wellness, and Chocolate to find out more about Katie and the program she has on offer.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
Did you know that menopause is not a medical condition? Most doctors don't know this either. I like to say that menopause is the privilege of a long life. And to really take hold of our lives in menopause, we have to unlearn what society and the medical establishment has told us about menopause. This is why I've created this brand new course called Understanding Your Hormones and Managing Your Menopause. I want to show you how you can get on top of your menopause right now so that you can start to see it as the best time of your life. Now, this course is valued at $500 and is in the beta testing phase. And we're currently accepting applications for women to test it out for us at no charge in exchange for feedback and testimonials. But the best part is, because you're a podcast listener, you can bypass the application process and go straight to the front of the line. To register right now, simply visit menopausemovement.com/hormones, and we can get started together right now. Remember, you can get started right now at no charge to you in exchange for feedback and testimonials when you go to menopausemovement.com/hormones. And I'll see you inside the course. Thanks so much for being a part of the Menopause Movement.